Well, welcome back. Republican presidential campaigns looking to sidestep party leaders and try to negotiate directly with TV networks over the ground rules for the remaining debates. This following controversy over last week's debate. Joining me right now is Republican presidential candidate and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Governor, good to see you.
Good to see you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start right there. What would you like to see in terms of a change for the debates, given the fact that Fox Business Network is going to be running the next debate next Tuesday?
I got to tell you the truth. I don't really care. Put the podiums up there. You ask questions. I'll be fine with it. I've got no problem with that at all, and there's no reason for us to be in the middle of this. Let the RNC deal with Fox Business and come up with the rules. I'll be there, Maria, and I'll be ready to discuss the issues.
All right. You have talked a lot about ways to create jobs, and you've talked about the regulatory environment, the tax burdens that we're seeing, and you say you can get a twofer by changing the regulatory and tax landscapes and using that money when you raise money to put it into infrastructure. Give us the core of your jobs plan.
Well, a few things. First off, we want to make the tax system in this country for individuals and corporations fairer and flatter. And we've said get rid of all of the loopholes and special interest deductions, except for the home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction on the individual side. Lower rates to 28% on the top end, 8% on the low end. 3 rates, you could do your taxes in 15 minutes. That's going to make things a lot easier for folks and a lot more money in the system. Corporate rates, lower it from 35 to 25%, get rid of a lot of the loopholes as well, and allow that $2.5 trillion or so that's offshore to be repatriated, one-time tax of 8.75%, and then use that money towards infrastructure.
A lot of the commentary from yourself and your colleagues up on stage, the GOP contenders in general, have talked about the regulatory environment as being very burdensome. What specific regulations are you looking to change, and how does that create jobs?
Well, first off, Dodd Frank has to be changed, and the way that creates jobs, Maria, as you know, is community banks in New Jersey are closing. And in states all over the country because of Dodd Frank, because the owner's regulation, the requirements, they're on small margins to begin with, and they can't make money and they're not lending money. That really hurts small businesses because they're not borrowing money from JP Morgan, they're not borrowing money from Citi, they're borrowing money from their local community bank who's not lending because of Dodd Frank. Dodd Frank is the first thing we got to get out of the way to create jobs, and we got to get out of the way for the small community banks. The too big to fail banks, let them be regulated. They've got the capital to handle it, but the community banks are getting crushed.
I think you make a really good point about these community banks, because the truth is as a result of Dodd Frank, you're seeing really balance sheets get dictated, and these banks are seeing a different flow of business, and the major banks are seeing a different flow of business because of this rule that they have to hold more capital.
And what they're doing as a result is they're not lending to small businesses, which by their very nature are riskier, and so they don't want to mess up their balance sheet for Dodd-Frank purposes with that, so they're just not lending. And this is really hurting small businesses' ability to expand. And as we know, the overwhelming majority of jobs created in this country are created by small business. That's what's keeping such a lag on this economy. One of the biggest regulatory problems we have.
Give us your assessment. Let me go back for a moment and ask you how we got here. Because we've been having a debate this morning on set about whether or not we're going to see a recession in the next 6 months. We know what's gone on with factory orders, the industrial complex. To what do you attribute this slow and stagnant economy?
What I contribute it to is the president is in his desire to control everything out of Washington, D.C. And so what you have now is the private sector hasn't seen the kind of growth they thought they would see coming out of a recession, and they see more and more government requirements, Dodd-Frank, Obamacare, etc. And 81,000 pages of new federal regulation just in 2014, the most in any year. So they see all that. They're not growing and expanding. I can't tell you how many small businesses say to me they don't want to get to that magic number in Obamacare because they don't want to have to deal with it. That's what's doing what we're doing. And I think what we're going to see coming out of this is the Fed, who has kept interest rates at zero, now have nothing in the toolbox in case we do go into recession. Where are we going to go from here? They should have been raising rates appropriately before. Now they've got no tools left in the toolbox. We could face a real big problem, and soon. And
you're not the first person to criticize the Federal Reserve. Let's say you do become president of this great country. What do you do with the Federal Reserve?
Well, you want the Federal Reserve to be independent, and you want them to make decisions not based upon politics, but upon the sound monetary policy.
So can you affect that as president?
Well, you're affected by the people you appoint. Absolutely. And you try to affect it by your rhetoric. You don't wind up trying to send signals to the Fed, winking at them and say, hey, maybe you should do this or do that, because let them control monetary policy in the country. And also the Fed should be audited to make sure that everybody has a sense of comfort that we're doing what we need to do, especially after a number of rounds of quantitative easing.
Let me ask you about crime in the country. It's gone up. Now you as a former prosecutor have really, specific solutions to this. You've talked about this. Crime is down in New Jersey.
Yep.
Tell us how that is and what you would do in terms of gun violence in this country.
First off, crime is down 20% in New Jersey in the last 3 years, and our prison population is down 10%. We're reforming the criminal justice system and going after the real violent criminals and letting the nonviolent criminals be dealt with in a different way. That's the first thing. Second, we support our police officers, Maria. And that's not what's happening right now in New York City. It's not what's happening in Chicago. It's not what's happening across the country. And most importantly, it's not happening from the President of the United States. And the FBI director has pointed this out, too. There's a chill wind blowing through law enforcement because they don't feel like they're being supported by the political forces in this country, and it's bad. Last thing, we're going to Camden today. Great story in Camden. When I came in as governor, the most dangerous city in America. We fired the entire police force, brought in a new police force focused on community policing. Murder in the last 3 years in Camden is down 58%.
Wow. Wow, congratulations.
We're going to try to bring that to the rest of the country when I'm president.
And we know that President Obama is coming to New Jersey today to talk about the criminal justice reform.
He's going to go someplace where it's actually being done, as opposed to him in the country who has done none of it. We're doing it in New Jersey, and it's ironic that the President of the United States is coming to take credit for something that a conservative Republican governor has done in New Jersey.
What are you going to do? Are you going to tell him that today? You're going to see him?
I'm not going to see him. I'm going to be in Camden. I'm going to be in Camden. He's going to be in Newark.
All right. Let me switch gears and look at national security overall. When Mitt Romney in the last election cycle said that Vladimir Putin was the guy to watch and the guy to worry about, President Obama laughed at him. Okay, so now we know that Putin has invaded Ukraine, has now put troops in Syria. What do you do as the next president?
Well, listen, you've got to show Vladimir Putin the limits of our patience. And the fact is the president owes an apology to Mitt Romney. Remember, he said to him, the 70s called and they want their foreign policy back. He and Hillary Clinton hit the reset button with Russia. And what have we gotten? Crimea taken over by the Russians, Ukraine invaded, and now Syria, and they're bringing the Iranians and the Cubans into Syria. This is bad for the Middle East. It's bad for American national security. Here's what I do. First is set up a no-fly zone in Syria to protect those rebels who are trying to fight against Assad, and make clear to Putin, if he goes into the no-fly zone, he will get shot down too. You need to make them understand that the United States is going to exert its influence around the world. And Russia is punching above weight here, Maria. He can't get planes off the ground most of the time in his military operation. His economy is crumbling. We should not be letting this guy steal our lunch money.
Broadly speaking, on national security and foreign policy, do you agree with the president's plan to have 10,000 troops in Afghanistan? What about the new 50 special ops that are going now to Syria?
On the 10,000 in Afghanistan, I think that's a smart move. I think we have to do that. We have to maintain Afghanistan as a place that is not become a place where terrorists are harbored. On the 50 special forces in Syria, why bother? I mean, the president has had no plan there. He should have enforced his red line that he drew years ago, and he didn't, and instead invited Russia into the Middle East where they hadn't been for 40 years. This makes no sense. We should be uniting our allies, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emiratis, the Saudis, to fight ISIS. We should be arming them and training them to fight ISIS because they know ISIS is a threat to them as well as a threat to us.
The voters and viewers who are watching want to figure out the different plans, your plan between your colleagues running for president right now. How do you distinguish yourself? Give us your take. Assessment on how you are so different than somebody like Trump, like Ted Cruz, like Marco Rubio, etc.
Because I've shaken up a blue state, a Democratic state, elected twice as a conservative Republican governor, and gotten things done. You want somebody who's going to tell it like it is? I'm that guy, but I also get things done. We've capped property taxes in our state. We've reduced spending by $2 billion. We've reduced the payroll by nearly 10,000 employees. We've reformed teacher tenure. We've fixed our pension and benefit system to a great degree. These are all things that we've gotten done. You want somebody to go to Washington and knows how to both stand up and fight over 400 vetoes since I've been governor, none overridden, and also knows how to work with the other side. You're looking at that person.
Most people will call tax reform one of the easiest levers to pull. Will you commit to making tax reform a priority in your economic agenda in the first year? Will you get it done in the first year?
It will be the first thing I send to Congress. There's the commitment.
And that's the reason, one of the reasons you said on that stage last week, I'm your guy to beat Hillary Clinton, take it to the bank.
That's exactly right.
Why? Why should we take it to the bank?
Listen, here's why. Because you need somebody who's tough and mature and tested. I've been tested, as you know, Maria, in the toughest media market in America, here in New York and New Jersey. I've been tested by a Democratic legislature every day. I've been tested by the forces of special interests like the teachers union in New Jersey, fought back and done well. That's the kind of person you need on the stage against Hillary Clinton, and someone who will be able to prosecute the case against her and her vision for America. I'm the guy to do it. Look at that stage. Look at those 10 people. Who's the person you want up there who you think's tough enough to fight her?
Final question. In the seat that you're in right now, a couple of weeks ago, we had the CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals. He's the guy who raised prices on his AIDS drug by 5,000%. A lot of people went crazy about it, including Hillary Clinton, who tweeted out basically suggesting drug prices should be regulated. Now, how are you going to keep prices at a place where people can afford those drugs that they need to save their lives? And at the same time, when you consider the fact that, for example, Alzheimer's, you get to the age of 85, 1 out of 2 people will get Alzheimer's. If a drug company is trying to come out with a drug to treat Alzheimer's and it becomes a cure, will you allow them to charge whatever they want for that drug?
Listen, here's the thing. Do we really think we want Washington, D.C. running the pharmaceutical industry? Look at everything Washington, D.C. runs, it doesn't run well. Now we want them determining prices in the pharmaceutical industry. We should not be doing that, Maria. The pharmaceutical industry has come up in this country with some of the greatest treatments and cures ever known to man. We need to let them continue to invest in that. To do that, we need to make it profitable for them to do it. Now, if there's price gouging going on, we've already got laws against price gouging, and prosecutors can bring those cases. We don't need more federal regulation and more federal involvement in this. I do not want Hillary Clinton deciding, sitting at her desk in the Oval Office, God forbid, deciding what prices pharmaceuticals should be. Crazy. It's just another example of the Obama-Clinton approach. All wisdom is in Washington. Everything should be decided there. Let's just turn our lives over to them. I say hell no.
Is there anybody on that stage, if you get the nomination, that you could call a running mate?
Sure.
Who?
Well, we'll see.
No ideas?
Oh, I have ideas, but I'm not going to tell you.
How about Ted Cruz?
Listen, I like Ted. We had a good time standing next to each other last week. But
how about Marco Rubio?
I think it's very presumptuous for anybody on that stage to be talking about vice presidential nominees. And the last person who did isn't in the race anymore. So I'd like to stay in the race, and I'd like to win it. So you know what? After I get enough delegates, Maria, to be the nominee, then I'll come back here and I'll talk to you about who I'm going to pick as my running mate.
Keep you on the record on that one.
Done deal.
You're going to come back, Governor Christie. Good to see you.
Thanks, Maria.
We'll see you next week at the debate. Thank you so much. Don't forget, Fox Business is teaming up with the Wall Street Journal next week to bring you the next Republican debate. That is Tuesday, November 10th. We'll be live from Milwaukee. I'll be co-moderating the 9 p.m. Eastern Time debate with Neil Cavuto. We'll be right back.